A new player has unexpectedly entered one of the world's most sensitive nuclear negotiations. And it's not the United States, Russia, or China. It is Kazakhstan. This Central Asian nation has indicated it could host Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile if negotiations between Tehran and Washington, currently on hold, eventually produce a nuclear agreement. Highly enriched uranium is one of two fissile materials, along with plutonium, with which one can make the core of a nuclear bomb. The disclosure came from International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi after talks with Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev in Astana. So why is Kazakhstan suddenly part of a debate over Iran's nuclear program? Let's connect the dots. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, before the June 2025 Israeli-US attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities, the agency had verified that Iran possessed roughly 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity. While 60% enrichment is below weapons grade level, experts say it can be enriched further to weapons grade, that's around 90% purity, much more quickly than uranium enriched at lower levels. Nuclear experts estimate that this quantity could theoretically provide enough fissile material for around 10 nuclear weapons if it were further enriched and weaponized. Even then, additional steps would still be required. Uranium enriched to 90% remains in gaseous form and must be converted into metal before it can be used in a weapon. As per IAEA's estimates, besides uranium enriched to 60%, Iran also had these additional amounts of enriched uranium when the first Israeli bombs fell on June 13th. 184.1 kilograms enriched to up to 20%, 6,024.4 kilograms enriched to up to 5%, and 2,391.1 kilograms enriched to up to 2%. The 20% stock would be enough for one nuclear weapon if enriched further, while the 5% stock could theoretically yield enough material for another 12 besides 10 from 60% stock. Taken separately, those quantities could theoretically yield enough weapons-grade material for as many as 23 nuclear weapons if fully enriched and weaponized. But what's not clear is how much has survived the attacks. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi says his agency believes a bit more than 200 kilograms of the 60% stock is stored at a tunnel complex in Isfahan that appears to have been largely unharmed by the June attacks, and some was also at the Natanz nuclear site. Iran's uranium stockpile has now become one of the most difficult issues in talks between Washington and Tehran before Tehran suspended the talks on Monday. The United States wants strict limits on Iran's nuclear program and has argued that the highly enriched uranium should no longer remain available for potential military use. US concern has been focused on the 60% material because that would be easiest and thus quickest to make a bomb with. Washington wants it gone. But Iran insists its nuclear program is peaceful and opposes transferring its 60% enriched uranium abroad. According to reports, negotiators have explored several possible ways of addressing the issue. One option is to transfer some of the enriched uranium to a third country and place it under international oversight outside Iranian territory. A second option is dilution. In simple terms, this would involve reducing the concentration of the enriched uranium, thus making it far less sensitive from a proliferation standpoint and significantly increasing the amount of additional processing that would be required before it could potentially be used in a weapon. A third option that has reportedly been discussed is a fuel swap arrangement. Under such an arrangement, Iran could relinquish part of its highly enriched uranium stockpile in exchange for nuclear fuel or lower enriched material suitable for civilian nuclear activities. Lower enriched uranium is commonly used as fuel for civilian nuclear reactors and is far less sensitive than uranium enriched to 60% purity. Supporters of this approach argue that it could allow Iran to retain access to nuclear fuel for peaceful purposes while reducing international concerns about its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. None of these options has been agreed upon. The fate of Iran's highly enriched uranium remains one of the biggest points of disagreement. Here's IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi talking about it.
We have been deeply involved in this situation in trying to find an acceptable, peaceful, diplomatic solution to the crisis around the nuclear program in Iran. So I think if this MOU is signed, it will be great news because at least according to what is being announced, there will be 60 days to look into the nuclear aspects on which we have been working for a long time. So I think we have some ground that has already been covered in terms of what needs to be addressed in a nuclear agreement. So I hope to be able to make our contribution. We still see important areas of disagreement between the two sides, in particular when it comes to the fate of the highly enriched uranium, which is still in Iran, and what kind of activities could possibly continue after that.
If negotiators eventually agree to move some of the uranium abroad, another question arises. How would such a transfer actually work? Experts say transporting highly enriched uranium is possible, but it is a highly specialized and carefully controlled process.
A very complicated process and a specialized process that we have figured out how to do well becomes even more complicated and frankly more dangerous when we're talking about highly enriched uranium. So uranium that's enriched to 60%, which is what we're dealing with in Iran. That material has to be moved in much smaller containers because of the concentration of uranium-235 in it. You run a much higher risk of criticality, essentially an explosion of that material, which would not be the same as a nuclear weapon explosion, just to make that clear, but again, is still a concern. So that material would be moved in much smaller containers.
The precautions don't stop there.
It would have to be packed in a way that would prevent it from kind of shaking around and bumping into each other. So it would be padded presumably with something. It would have to be packed in a way that prevents water droplets rather, from getting into those casks. So again, you kind of seal it with something, you'd surround it with some kind of material to absorb any water droplets in the air. So again, a very specialized, complex process that we know how to do, and the U.S. will know how to do. But it's not a simple kind of throw it on the back of a truck and move it situation.
In fact, Iran has moved enriched uranium between nuclear facilities under IAEA monitoring before. Under the 2015 nuclear deal and earlier agreements, some of its uranium, enriched to up to 20%, was either diluted, converted into reactor fuel, or shipped to Russia. Transporting the material is only one challenge. The IAEA says it does not currently have full visibility over the status of Iran's enriched uranium following the conflict and strikes on key nuclear facilities. International inspectors have not been able to independently verify the exact condition or location of all of the material.
So we know what levels Iran was enriching to and how much they had been accumulating based on the International Atomic Energy Agency's reporting. So the IAEA is, if you will, kind of the international nuclear watchdog. It maintains visibility of countries' nuclear programs, including Iran's nuclear program. So the International Atomic Energy Agency had at various times varying degrees of access, but had quite good access to Iran's nuclear program. Certainly before 2021, I think it was, when Iran started rolling back that access. it was a lot more comprehensive under the JCPOA, and immediately following kind of the U.S. withdrawal of the JCPOA, Iran eventually started rolling back the IAEA's access to its various facilities. So we did lose some visibility.
So why is Kazakhstan even being discussed? The answer lies in a facility it already hosts on behalf of the international community. Kazakhstan is home to the IAEA's low-enriched uranium bank. In simple terms, the bank functions as an internationally supervised reserve of nuclear fuel. It was established to provide countries operating civilian nuclear power plants with a backup supply of low-enriched uranium if they are unable to obtain fuel through normal commercial channels. The facility is not intended to support weapons programs. Instead, it was created to strengthen confidence in the global nuclear fuel market and reduce incentives for countries to develop their own enrichment capabilities solely to guarantee fuel supplies. The uranium stored at the bank remains under strict IAEA oversight and can only be accessed under specific conditions approved by the agency. Because Kazakhstan already hosts this internationally supervised facility, it possesses experience in securely handling, storing, and monitoring nuclear material in cooperation with the IAEA. That existing infrastructure is one reason Grossi believes Kazakhstan could become a possible destination if negotiators ultimately decide that some of Iran's uranium should be stored outside the country. For now, though, there is no agreement. Neither Washington nor Tehran has publicly announced a deal on the future of the stockpile. US President Donald Trump has said Iran's highly enriched uranium should either be removed, destroyed, or otherwise neutralized under international supervision. He has also said he would not support Russia or China taking custody of the material. So any role for Kazakhstan remains tentative. The future of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile has yet to be decided. But for a country rarely mentioned in discussions surrounding Iran's nuclear program, it has suddenly found itself at the center of a diplomatic conversation with global implications. Whether Iran's uranium remains in the country, is diluted under international supervision, exchanged for civilian reactor fuel, or is eventually moved abroad remains one of the biggest unanswered questions in the negotiations. And if a transfer is ultimately agreed, Kazakhstan could emerge as one of the leading candidates to host it. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you in the next episode with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.